This is the Money Loves Women podcast, the podcast that guides women to wealth and an extraordinary life. Here's your host, Dr. Deborah Ekstrom.
This is Dr. Deborah Ekstrom for the Money Loves Women podcast. Today, I'd like to welcome Shirley Kurnoff, and she is from Strategy Boost, and she's going to tell us about that in a little while. Shirley was born in Edinburgh, Scotland. She's also lived in South Africa and grew up part of her growing up years there. She's been educated around the world. She got to spend some time in the United States, and that influenced her, and she'll tell us more about that. And she has done many things, educated herself in many ways, including writing books for us all. And we're going to hear more about that. Shirley, welcome to the program. We're eager to hear all about your life and the pearls of wisdom you have to offer us. But first, tell us about Edinburgh and then South Africa, what your growing up years were like, why you were in those locations, and what influenced you in that process.
Sure. Nice to meet you and everyone else who's listening in. It wasn't my choice, but I loved what we did. My parents decided to move from Scotland and go to Africa where it was warmer. Very similar life to California. And then we returned back to Edinburgh when I was a teenager. Reflecting on that, I'm happy that we did move around because my lifestyle has always been a go-getter. I've never been concerned about the view doesn't change in front of me. I'm okay. I reach out, grab it and say it's an opportunity. So that's how I got. Then I got to Edinburgh, returned, went to high school, graduated. And at high school, I saw a notice that said, hey, you want to come to America? And I went, yes. So I applied for an exchange student for 12th grade and very fortunate. I stayed with a really nice family in Cleveland, Ohio. We're still so friendly. And my American parents, who I stayed with, they encouraged us to come to California. They said taxes are bad in England. We have two very young children. The weather's not brilliant. So we immigrated. It was wonderful.
So you immigrated and now you're in California. What shaped you? Maybe you don't remember that much about Edinburgh. I'm not sure. You were pretty young when you left. But what shaped you in your family life? And what sorts of things did your parents impart to you or fail to impart to you that influenced you? And especially what happened in South Africa that influenced you?
I'm embarrassed to say in South Africa, I was a child in a very limited way. I didn't know much what was going on politically. I was very fortunate to be a competitive tennis player. So my childhood was all about tennis tournaments and subsequently coming to Edinburgh and played in the Scottish Championships and was invited to play at Junior Wimbledon. So I can't say I had a very straightforward life, with tennis being a premium part of growing up. And I didn't know too much about politics, but of course I know now about them. And
yes, of course.
Yeah.
Yes. Tell us, I've had so many women who have been in sports and achieved in sports. Do you think that had any influence on how you conducted your life as an adult?
Very much so. There's an innate confidence. You also have to stay the course. You can't just throw the towel in. So to be able to get to the finals of any tournaments, you really have to keep going. And I make that analogy with my husband and I. When we emigrated here, we started our own company and have stayed the course. It's different to Strategy Boost, but I just think it keeps you on a road that you see that there's light at the end of the tunnel, even if the economy's changing, if your client base is changing, you stay the course.
Shirley, you've been through some ups and downs of economy. Not everybody lived through some of the things you've lived through. Tell us more about that. How do you view that? How do you manage yourself and your business when that happens, when the economy changes?
Um, in life, you've really got to be flexible. It did happen, I think, the 1990s. We'd started our company when we first arrived, and we had a really large database. And then, as the Fortune 500 giants came in and gobbled up some of the smaller independents, we had to change the course of our business. Um, I actually went back to Stanford, and was thinking I'd get some insight there, which I did. But you just got to keep your foot on the pedal and be resourceful. Actually, as a result of that, we came up with a different strategy for our client base, and that's worked really well.
So you and your husband are were in business together.
Yeah,
Yes.
and
And
still
what kind of business? And still are. That's a good
yeah,
sign.
they're very unusual. We bring in European cobblestones from the streets of Europe. So when you walk in Bruges, Paris, London, Munich, wherever, there's old cobblestones. And the American people would like a piece of Europe. So we bring them, they're in black basalt, they're in granite, they're in sandstone, and they lay them on their driveways. Or some corporations use them for their areas in the office buildings.
So they bring them in bulk. Where
In
do they come from?
containers, yeah.
Are they now walking on dirt in
You
Europe?
know, some people love the old cobblestones that are 100, 200 years old, and they often ask us which village did they pick it up from. Um, and the reason we're able to get the cobblestones is in some towns, there's been protest with skateboarders, with people who unfortunately are in a wheelchair. So they're doing ADA there, and they're wanting to. So what they do is they cut the cobblestone in half, and we take the tops and the bottom that's flat, they put back down in the town center. Yeah,
Fabulous. Sounds like a win-win. At least they're not walking on dirt, and now you get some wonderful European cobblestones to
yeah,
bring to the United States and allow people to
yeah.
pave with and have beautiful European walkways and so forth. That's
That's
fabulous. How'd you
cool.
come up with this idea?
Um, Yes, you asked me before market change. We had started with interior marble and granite for many department stores. And when in the 1990s things changed, we had to change our format. So we decided not indoors, we went outdoors. And that's
And
how
stuck with stone.
we stuck with stone, but we just
Stuck with
did a
stone.
different direction. You have to.
Yes, you have to pivot sometimes
Yeah,
and be resilient. Yeah, and
yeah,
resourceful. Well, that's
yeah.
a wonderful idea. I've never ever heard of that. And it's
Would you
actually
like some
great.
cobblestones?
I might. I might. I'm going to turn that around in my head a little bit. What's it been like being in business with your husband?
It's been fine. We have different directions. I'm much more on the strategy, proposals. I'm editing, colors. I'm talking to the clients about, what's the color of your door, your windows, your roof? What do you want to emphasize? Sometimes it's really good for women to get involved in the conversation. Um, I think it puts a softer touch to the project, and it works. So, yeah.
So it sounds to me like you're in charge of client relations
When they come through, yeah, yeah.
and
My
strategy both.
strategy. My
Mhm.
husband always teased me, you're always analyzing about something. I said, that's part of my work. I went to grad school, I'm analyzing, and so it works out. Yeah,
What
we
was
have,
your degree? What was your
I
degree,
did
Shirley?
So I did undergrad in education, I did a master's in education, and then I did my PhD in sociology.
In sociology. Okay. Are you a creative by nature?
Um, Maybe creative in the literary sense. Yeah.
Okay.
Creative in color, probably. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yes.
like
So,
things looking good.
yeah, so it sounds to me like you're an aesthetic. You have at least some of that. A part of
Yeah.
you is an aesthetic.
Yeah. I
And then
think so.
yeah, and the strategy part is also creative.
Yeah. The strategy
Yes.
is more analytical because of my training. I'm
Yes.
analyzing things, which I like.
Did your
'Cause,
education degree come in helpful?
um, not so much in this business, but I did do a sideline because I was writing books, and my education did definitely. I'm very
Yes.
organized and disciplined. I do believe so. And to do a PhD, gosh, you're left on your own. I think my thesis was about 300 pages. I had to get it vet by different professors worldwide. Yeah, it's taught me a lot.
It's taught you a lot. There's no wasted experiences, is there?
Not at all. And I think the way you handle your life, if you're organized, um, you definitely produce output better. It's really important. I mean, I do a silly thing like note cards, the 99-cent note cards from Target. I have those little note cards for each day and what my checklist is. I have it on the computer as well, but I like these little note cards. They jog me to say, you've got to do this before that expires, or it's good. You've got to be organized. Otherwise, you get into a spiral downwards staircase format. So,
I agree with you. It's so good to be organized. I like paper too, but many people really like the electronic,
yeah.
which I respect. Um, have you had any challenges working together as a couple? And do you have any other family members in your business?
We do not. No. Our kids who have grown up have all gone off to start their own companies or in finance. Yeah, it's fine. I always say to them, "Hey, you're lucky we emigrated and you're not back still in England." Um, no, I think we had respect for each other. We defined it very early on. It's like working with any partner, be it your husband, your sister, your cousin, I mean, we just know our roles. He likes to do all the logistics and work out the finance numbers. I look at the finance numbers. I go, no, I don't like that number. So we talk about it. But he'll call me in for what we're presenting. I think we know our boundaries. That's most important.
So
Yeah.
you have fit your roles together. It's been pretty good at seaming those together, it sounds like.
Yeah.
That's a huge skill to have, to work with any family member, not to mention your husband.
I know.
So good
But
for you. Good
we
for you.
do it.
That's a huge
And
accomplishment.
yeah, and I have leeway. I'm a big keep fit girl, so I go running early or I go to yoga class early. I'd rather work, and that's a strategy I would really like to underscore. I think the brain is so much more fertile once you've worked out, or go on the Peloton at 6:37 in the morning. I think you start your work day so much more with clarity than just a cup of coffee. So that's my theory.
So as we talked about before, not there's the central stacks of wealth building, making a decision, taking responsibility for your money, fixing your mindset if you need to, designing your life with wealth in mind. And it sounds like you did that a number of times. You just designed and redesigned, and then creating your machine that's going to give you both fulfillment and create value in the world, but also creates excess cash flow. But the piece that I'm noticing is you were very intentional about how you made your life work so you could work. So tell us what else you do besides, I mean, you told us you do hot yoga, you play golf with your girl buddies, you get on the Peloton early in the morning. But and you also have an attitude, which is life is for living, not for moping. So tell us more about how you make your life work, so you can work besides checklists and making
Um,
sure you have mind clarity.
uh, well, with regards golf, I will only play late in the afternoon at 5 o'clock. My girlfriends know that. I can't do middle of the day or mornings. Um, I do want to work out every day. I was diagnosed with diabetics 2 many years ago, and the endocrinologist has told me stay slim, eat right, and exercise. So that's the goal. Um, so during COVID, I bought the Peloton, which I know is not so popular at the moment, but I find it very quick, 30 minutes of weights and working out, or 45 minutes. I'll go run in the morning, but I know the night before my checklist what work I have to do. If it's time sensitive and I'm speaking to Europe, I'll be up at 6, I'll work till 9, and then I'll work out. So I'm not,
Hmm.
I think each day you have to be flexible and see where the workload is, the priorities, and then, but fit in your workout. It's important. It's important to
Excellent.
see clarity. Yeah, really
I
important.
know I know you're very supportive of working mothers.
I am.
Tell me more about your philosophy around working mothers and what your directives are in that direction.
I'm very supportive because we lived in the Bay Area in the 1980s, and women were just coming up into their own, but they struggled. They were becoming lawyers, physicians, accountants. But when I did my interviews, particularly in Australia, um, there was still a perception that you were a woman, you're going to be a mother, and you're not going to dedicate your life to work. And this was particular in law firms where women were not asked to be partners. And it also happens in the medical world. I'm happy to say that now, 2023, things have improved a heck of a lot for professional women. um, Husbands are playing an equal role, and women physicians, attorneys, accountants are just as good as anybody. They're better. They have an understanding. So I was curious to know if, with a college degree, that was my thesis, if it helped women to get a better salary, to get a better position in life, and to get respect in the professional world. And it certainly did. I interviewed over 100 women, um, those who didn't have a college degree or maybe just had an undergrad degree, and they were quite struggling with how they were going to straddle motherhood, paying for babysitting, not earning that much. It sort of equated to no profit. The hours they were paying for babysitting and the hours what they were getting paid. So I was quite a proponent of getting that long-term degree and having something that's really worthwhile so you can afford the babysitting,
Yes.
which and and
So,
if you and I also, from the interviews, I noticed the women who had a profession, or they were in the film industry or wherever they were, um, they were able to answer to their husbands and say, look, I've got work as well, as opposed to hubby goes off to work and mum is staying home with the kids. So I think it helped them say, we're in this partnership equal.
yes, give
Uh,
them a better standing.
yeah.
You know, it's interesting having you talk about the professional women and college and all of that, and it's absolutely true, right? You know, if you're going to move forward, you need to be bringing in enough income that you can cover your bases
Mm.
and thrive and then have money to invest. The interesting thing that's turned now is that having more women in the trades are becoming so highly paid that women can now go into the trades and not have to invest that time and money if they don't have that proclivity, or they don't have the finances, or they're interested in the trades. They can now make a very healthy living for themselves in the trades.
Great.
They can own businesses in the trades by coming up through the ranks and learning what goes on if they're curious and apply themselves. And they can also do very well. And it's not something women always think of, but there's more and more women going into the trades. And I like to tell the story about my patient who was a personal care assistant, and she wasn't making a working living. Mm-hmm. And her father had been in construction, and he said, "Why don't you go into a construction related trade?" So she went to school, and she became a crane operator. And now she's the most in demand crane operator in Boston. And the contractors love her because she shows up, she's on time, she doesn't fight, she doesn't drink, she's reliable, and she doesn't get into trouble. And so it's just an example of professionals. Yes, absolutely. Women are in great numbers in the professions and coming up. We see it in plastic surgery now. It's just wonderful. But women are also entering the trades. And there's a huge opportunity right now in trade businesses, but in many businesses, to acquire businesses of baby boomers who are leaving their businesses and looking for people to take them on. So there's a lot of opportunity. And I think women are uniquely positioned actually to take advantage of that.
Yeah.
But we still have all those challenges of childcare.
I know.
And
Equal pay.
Yeah, it's still a big challenge, isn't it?
And the finance sector is not opening their arms yet so much to women. I don't know why.
And the women who get into the finance sector often leave because it is not a hospitable atmosphere for women yet. So we have to keep striving forward in there until we take it over.
But there's many more women entrepreneurs, and I did look into mompreneurs when I was doing my research, and I was delighted to see how many mothers who had really good work. They had been employed, but once they had kids, they preferred to do contract work or start their own business. They started a stroller business or a candy business, but they were able to share the load. So they both understood about children and said, "Hey, I can't do 3:00, but I'll work late tonight. 3:00 is pick up kids." So we got to find ways, and then we'll
get there.
Successful.
What else did you find out in your study on working moms besides that kind of information? I think that's great that a lot of women had children and left corporate and became entrepreneurs.
Correct.
What else did you find out?
I did find out disturbingly that the professional women, if they came off course and didn't keep on the treadmill, they lost out. So, for instance, attorneys, physicians, anyone in finance, dentistry, you couldn't take time off for your kids. You got left behind. Even working for places like Google, Facebook, there was something that you left and then you came back. You lost out on technology. You lost out on the conversation. So there's definitely a pressure to stay the course and try and work it out how you can stay the course. If it's bringing in your in-laws or your parents or just trying to work it out. It's quite hard getting back if you've been gone for 5-6 years. I've seen women struggle. I interviewed people. They said it was demoralizing. Like, what have you done for the last 5 years at home? So it's hard. That's society.
Yeah. Some people say, well, you've been at home. People say to themselves, you've been at home, so you're advancing your skills. But is that actually how it's viewed on the other end when you go back to work? Because it sounds like that's a no. It looks like you've not advanced your skills during that time, you've been treading water. That's how it's
Correct.
viewed.
Correct. And even if you're a volunteer at the school, corporate America, the professionals are not looking at it in a positive way. It's interesting. That's
Understood.
possibly why women are entrepreneurs in many cases, especially this Generation X, which is a very large cohort. They're starting their own companies. They're with founders who are males, but they're right up there. And I know quite a
Mhm.
few women who are VCs now, whereas before we didn't have any female VCs.
Absolutely true. Venture capitalists.
Yeah,
Yes, absolutely
yeah.
true. It's nice to see that.
It's
Very nice to see that.
correct.
Hmm. I'm running into more women who are supporting women into businesses as venture capitalists, as uh, coaches, as connectors.
Yeah,
And it's really good to see. And the interesting thing is that when women start their own companies, they're much more likely to succeed than men are. And yet they get less of the venture capital, they get less of the support. And there's a number of initiatives now underway that I run into to try to
correct.
change that. And it's even harder for women of color to get funding and get support. And I've also seen some initiatives for that. So that's pretty exciting.
I
You,
think on the VC side, um, if you have products that are related to families, the VC people are interested. We can't compete with the high tech guys. They know their stuff, or seemingly, although Google's not so good and Facebook at the moment. But anyway, um, I see with the VC female venture capitalists, they're looking at products that are much more mainstream and for families, um, and they're flying. So it's more a consumer product that women know about, and they've started it. So
very interesting.
yeah.
Tell us about your work with autistic youth.
Oh, it's very, very, very rewarding. I think it's because I worked with kids who had dyslexia. My own daughter is a very successful founder and has their own company. It was tricky in school. I do remember going to a psychologist on my own about her, and the lady said, this is back in the 90s, she said, don't expect your daughter to go to 4-year college. And I left the meeting and I went, what? She's going to a 4-year college. Don't do that to me. And she did. She ended up at Boston University. And I cried on the River Charles when she graduated because that was a big achievement. The autistic volunteering, I was looking where to volunteer one morning a week. And I'm getting so much pleasure out of meeting these very bright kids. Well, they're not kids, they're between 20 and 30. They each have to have a carer. Some of them are talking to me about what they read recently, and they know about London and Stockholm, and they're asking me questions about the weather. I mean, they're very bright, but sadly they can't function in society on their own. And we have a relationship. I bring books to some of them because they want to read and find out more, and I leave there very fulfilled. It makes you feel how lucky you are. You're lucky,
Yes,
very lucky.
great.
And
That sounds really great.
yeah.
And tell me what Strategy Boost is all about.
So Strategy Boost I started many years ago. After Stanford, I wrote the book on dyslexia. I interviewed 140 people. Uh, some of them were in England. Um, and I found that there was a big interest. So, and I got endorsed by Richard Branson of Virgin, which was pretty cool because he's dyslexic. Um, And as I moved into writing and giving talks, because once you produce a book, you stand up and you go to the bookstores, blah, blah, blah. There was a niche. We were living in the Bay Area at the time, and there was a niche for women in corporations to have like a lunchtime bag lunch and talk. And I would give workshops on, and it was very much a brown bag lunch, open communication. What have you learned? Um, and they enjoyed it a lot. It was very successful. But we moved down south to Los Angeles, and I found it was a different, how can I say, more spread. Up in the Bay Area, in Menlo Park, Palo Alto, there was a lot of corporations, and we could definitely feel that area. Whereas down here in LA, you're more spread out. But
Yeah,
so good.
more sprawling. Yeah,
Yeah,
very good.
yeah.
Well, Shirley, it's been fun to talk to you. Tell me, if you were going to take from all your years of experience and wisdom and all the things that have gone on for you, and the work you've done and research you've done with women, if you were going to give women some actionable advice that right here and now they could apply to their lives to improve their success and well-being, what would you say?
I would say you have inner strength, you have inner confidence. Don't be beaten down by some of the, men who shout and try and beat us down. I've stood my ground. Please stand your ground. You're smart as heck. They just have loud voices sometimes, and when you're sitting at a boardroom or sitting around a table, sometimes it gets a little intimidating. Stand your ground, because you're wise and you'll know where to invest. You'll know if you want to invest in property, if you want to do the stock market, or you want to invest in a startup. But have that confidence in you. We can do it. We can do it for sure.
So be confident, and you heard it here. Shirley believes in you.
I do.
Excellent advice. Stand your ground, know who you are, and stand up for yourself. Good. Thanks so very much for coming on.
Pleasure.
It's been really fun talking to you. I look forward to meeting you face to face, and I really appreciate your wisdom and your knowledge.
Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
This is Dr. Deborah Ekstrom for the Money Loves Women podcast. To your health, to your wealth, and to your happiness. May blessings rain down upon you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Money Loves Women podcast. Please leave us a rating and review so we know how we can improve. Visit MoneyLovesWomen.com to gain more insight into how to live an extraordinary life.